It is a great pleasure for me to welcome today at the Faculty of Architecture and Design of Slovak University of Technology really starts architect PATRICK LÜTH, Executive Director of Norwegian Studio Snøhetta, and architect David West, Founding Director of the British Studio Egret West. We'll talk today about the successful projects of their studios and about the challenges of contemporary architectural practice. These two top studios will be collaborating on the South Bank projects in Bratislava, for which they won an international architectural competition in cooperation with the Slovak studio GRO. Let me also thank our partner, Penta Real Estate, for making our meeting today possible. Have a nice architectural experience. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. I think we need to switch something. Okay, I'm going to time myself. Try for 20. No, it's there.
Okay.
Okay. Stop watching. Go. Oh, this as well. Hello. Okay, so...
Alebo toto.
This one?
This one.
This one. Okay. Who would not use this one? Come on. This is amazing. So far we've learnt that in Bratislava, if you're an architect or a designer, you're also a rock star. So if you keep up your singing, your guitar playing, your saxophoning, your piano playing, anything like that, then your architecture, your landscape, your urbanism is going to be better. So I'm delighted to be here with my great friend Patrick, and my good friend Juraj, and Mo, also here from Innsbruck, Snøhetta, to share lots and lots of slides with you at great pace. So I apologize immediately for the amount of information we're going to share with you. You all look bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to be filled with content, so we'll give you that. The plan for the day is to give you a flavor of why we are pitching together. 2, some stories from Studio Egret West. 3, some stories from Snøhetta. And lastly, a flavor of our vision for the South Bank with Penta. So a lot to cram in 60 minutes. It's going to be fast talking. I'm not showing you that yet. Do you see that? That was a teaser. Apparently it just went live 5 minutes ago. Our good friend Jakob has just given me the wink that we can now show you everything at pace. So why Snøhetta and Studio Egret West? Well, I'm lucky enough to live in London, but also married to a wonderful girl from Austria, and we live in Innsbruck as well a little bit some of the year. And I'm a massive fan of Snøhetta, and 5 years ago Patrick allowed us to go and visit this super cool project in Swarovski in Wattens, which is like a tower of play, and it's the grooviest, most playful structure I've ever experienced. And ever since then I've been saying, hey, can we do something together? And last summer Penta came up with a huge competition, shortlisting Zaha Hadid, shortlisting OMA, and shortlisting Bjarkingle's group, which set the bar very high, and this was the one for us to really have a go at. We were asked to give 5 thoughts in our first round hand-in as to why our team was our team. And so these are the 5 thoughts. First of all, both our practices deal with interconnected natural and built communities where we intertwine over multiple levels and multiple dimensions, nature and program and performance when we create and craft neighborhoods. And that's really, really important to us. The second point is that both our studios really care about the public realm and about the nature and the landscape that intertwines environments. And we care about journeys, personal journeys, group journeys, and the ability to flaneur the city, to promenade the city, and different routes and connections of all scales in our practices work. The third thing that draws us together is a huge desire to play, and play to not stop when you are not a child anymore. We can still play when we're older. We can still play when we're a lot older. We should play our entire lives away, and it'll make us a lot happier. I'm a pretty smiley, happy dude. I'm 50 next year. I play a lot. And a lot of play in all of our environments over many, many levels and layers of our projects. We also keen, both studios, at embracing nature, embracing forms that respond and are not inhibited. We also have no in-house style, both practices. We don't come to a city and smack it in the face with our scheme and say, we're finished. You had what we had last year for breakfast. Instead, we craft a new idea, a specific idea for each and every project. And that's really, really important to both practices. And then last but not least, the ability to see the wood from the trees. Super important to both our studios is sustainability and an integral approach to sustainability, not just some greenwashing, not just a little bit of a beard of green just to say it's quite cute. You know, it's fundamental to us that we think about sustainability at all levels and integral to all. So hopefully that you get the vibe of why we're together. I've been given the mic first, and I'm going to make sure I don't over-talk. So, okay, 20 minutes maximum. So, Studio Egret West. Okay, we are the less famous part of the duo. He's kind of cooler than us, and Snøhetta's like more famous than us. And we're kind of relatively famous in the UK. We're working on some of the biggest projects in London, Birmingham, Manchester. We don't get out that much, and we're nearly 20 years old as a practice. And so this is actually our first major international win. It's about time we got out there and did something. We're 70 people strong. I'm getting a nice kind of you and them kind of connection. This is us hanging out at London Zoo, which is our most recent competition win in the UK before this one. I can't tell you about that one, but it's totally weird because we're learning about animals and animal welfare and sentience. We work with 7 defining S's, 7 defining kind of processes that we have in all of our attitude, I guess, as a practice. The first one is studio, as in the studio is more important than me. As in it's not David West's studio, it's Studio Egret West. There happens to be 2 founders, but the studio is more important than us. It goes beyond us. And we really strongly believe that when you study, you shouldn't stop studying. You shouldn't finish your studies and then work in an office and suddenly change everything about you. We really believe you should carry on that inquisitive nature, that curiousness, and continue to grow your thinking. So no idea is a bad idea unless it's proven wrong. We give everybody the chance to really shine in the studio. The second thing is we're on the ground floor. Our studio is based in a courtyard, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4 images of exactly the same space. It's constantly changing, and we have a showroom like a shop, and every 4 months we ask ourselves a question that we don't know the answer to, and then we invest lots of money in trying to find out the answer. And it's a really cool thing to do because it's constantly allowing us to be thought leaders. At the moment, our latest investigation is about the future of food production, and food networks in our cities. It's really exciting. We've already made friends with the Science Museum, the World Wildlife Fund, and all sorts of different writers and authors just because they've walked past our shop and said, what is going on? I've got to go inside. And it allows us to break boundaries and go beyond being architects, urban designers, landscape architects, literally to engage with politicians and city makers of all kinds. Sustainability throughout, that's the third S. Patrick will dwell on that a lot more than me, I think. We always zoom between scales. Strategy, with specificity, the big scale, the small scale, on every project. And I would urge that in every presentation you give, in every project you give, always try and zoom through those scales. Have a really big idea and a really small idea too, that allows you to imagine what might happen first. The first phase, the first intervention in city making is crucial. We tell a lot of stories. It's a crucial one of our S's. I think you've probably got the vibe already on that one. Symbiosis. We don't have departments. We don't have, we try to limit our job titles as much as possible. We're designers. We happen to have graphic designers, model makers, poets, researchers, architects, urban designers, landscape architects, but we jam together. We're like a jazz band rather than an orchestra. It can go a bit wrong. And you know, every now and then someone plays out of tune, but that's kind of okay. We believe the last S in serendipity. And if that's a new word to you, then I'll explain it. Serendipity is this amazing ability to be open-minded enough for happenstance to occur. A lucky break, something you weren't expecting. I really believe that the cure for cancer will be through serendipity. And so we constantly create environments, whether they're the building scale or the master plan scale or the public space scale in between, that create room for other people to make their mark, for other people to bounce into. Hey, who are you? You're really cool, let's hang out together. Hey, oh, you were thinking that? That's amazing, me too, let's do this together. And if you don't have that bounce, then you're kind of dead. And then you're not moving forward, and then you just become average. And I would say that across every discipline. So serendipity to us is this constant reappraising and open-mindedness to what is new. And if there's one lesson I'd give you today to take away, that word is king, really powerful. So, some really fast projects. I've got 15 minutes. I'm going to try and run you through about 5 projects that give a sense of how those things come to pass. This is the old vinyl factory in London. It used to look like that back in the old days. It was a really cool place. It looked like that about 10 years ago. Complete and utter dereliction. Really sad times. This is zone 6 of London, so the outer edge of London. So think the most outer edge of Bratislava and we'll be on the same page. Really low value. No one wants to live there. No one wants to work there. Nothing going on. This is the master plan for the project. Before we got involved. And their idea was to call it London Gate, because it was kind of on the edge of London, so it's a gateway. And then we'll have loads of car parking, and then we'll have some office buildings which will be called London Gate 1, London Gate 2, and London Gate 3. Yeah! And then we'll have a building called Block D, and that's the Resi, and someone's going to want to live there. Of course, no one wants to live on a block like that on their own. It'd be miserable. And who wants to sort of hang out in the office spaces with nothing but car parking? So luckily, we were invited to come up with a better idea when our client bought the site. And of course, we did the most important thing, which is check back the history of this place. What's it actually all about? Not London Gate at all. This place was the birthplace of vinyl. This is the gramophone factory. This is the place where huge amounts of recording. If any of you are old enough, or indeed young enough and cool enough, to have vinyl records, I promise at least one of them will have been printed, pressed in this exact geographic location, London Gate. And of course, what we decided to do was call it the old vinyl factory. Duh. Really obvious thing, the old vinyl factory. But boy, suddenly that changed absolutely everything. Everybody wanted to talk about the project. People wanted to engage with the project. People wanted to party about the project. People wanted to make some new cool music in the project, in the derelict spaces. Suddenly we were recording again, singing again, dancing again, telling stories again, making cool pop-ups for people to convene with each other and having a nice time. And we went from complete low-rise nothing car parking to a much more mixed-use, compact neighborhood. Really strong parameter rules here in terms of heights, but suddenly our client gets 700 homes instead of 100 homes. They get 4 times as many jobs and a lot higher quality public realm. And the first, most uninteresting thing that we did was to build a car park. But we made the car park with attitude. So suddenly we actually, because of the old vinyl factory story, we bought a piece of Beatles mania artwork, projected it on, perforated it into the material of a super cheap car park, same color as my jacket. But that unlocked the whole site. Really cheap car park with a bit of cool vibe, suddenly unlocked the whole place. And suddenly we were able to make loads more landscape. Of course, we made the ultimate dog, because the dog is the face of the gramophone factory. We put in the landscape. We made these really sweet little gramophones that really do play. And there's a really great spirit that came out of this place. Then we started to make jobs. Then we started to make refurbishments. Then someone phoned me literally and said, hey, this project's so cool. Can we make an academy on your project? Can we make a music recording academy in this Nowhereville place? I was like, super cool, of course you can. Now we have 700 students learning to write rock and roll and record things on this place that no one wanted to be. With that in mind, we started to make jobs, real jobs, actually getting people, like in university state, to actually start dreaming about new ideas. And we made a building project. This will be the permanent version in a few years' time that actually allows them to be the powerhouse, which is the original powerhouse of the place, is the powerhouse of the job creation in the future. Then we made the boiler house, which happens to look like 3 boiler rooms that connect together, metallic like the original idea. And it's boiler. It's actually just an apartment building, but it's an apartment building with identity, with attitude. It's cheap, but it's cool, and it's sold instantly. One weekend, done, everybody's happy. And that's the sort of spirit of storytelling, which is in all of our projects. Over in East London, Eastwick and Sweetwater, we were lucky enough to win a competition to craft a place in between the Olympic Park on the right and this artistic, messy warehouse district on the left. Huge amount of informal artists, makers, creatives living in warehouses together here, and really, really, really proper landscape and sporting infrastructure here. How do we mesh the two? How can we make these two places make friends? Well, obviously one is gargantuan, huge scale, huge ambition. The other is just cool. Messy, graffiti, painting, cool parties, saxophonists on the roof. How do you mesh those things together? And what we did was just spend loads of time, small-scale projects to start with. This looks like it's been there for 30 years. It's actually just been there for 5 years. It's not a perfect piece of architecture by any means. It kind of somehow jams together some of the different textures and qualities that we found. But importantly, it allowed the artists to stay and connect into this super nice, really flexible ground floor space, while the homes above paid for that to happen. And then we started to think about other warehouses and how we might bring them back to life, to say, hey, you're welcome to stay. You can be part of this place. This one's about to go on site as another phase. And these projects started to kickstart a change in the regeneration and the feeling of the place, a connection to the park and to quality of architecture, which allowed us to then start to bring forward 1,500 homes, interconnecting the spaces. And crucially, we opened up all the blocks. We opened up all the routes through to make sure that there was nature going all the way through. We found new uses. This is the work of an architectural practice called Hawkins Brown, who took the media center from the Olympic Games and transformed it into a really, really groovy place to work, to make things, robotics, automation, all sorts of interesting industry. We created new schools, new primary spaces, a creche space, bars, cafe, new bakery, all coming together in these buildings that just felt like they were from here. If you say you have no style, you have to have no style. You know, these are just warehouse buildings. It felt right. Nothing too expensive, nothing too different. And instead of saying, we're going to build everything in 5 years, we accepted this is going to be 15 years, maybe 20 years. So I encouraged our client to give up one of their sites for a 10-year lease. Why not? And actually, an architect called Carl Turner came along and made on one of the free sites in the master plan for 10 years only, this super cool place that people can cook up ideas, make businesses, have parties, and extend that connection through. And therefore you get more of a sense of life coming to this place. And I would say in South Bank, we need to help nurture life, help nurture a destination, help nurture why would I want to be there? What's in it for me? Way before we build houses and apartments. And we take that kind of thinking on much, much bigger scales all the way around London. Large-scale transformations of shopping centres. This one's called Vicarage Field. The heart of this project's all about food. This is the first phase. It's curvaceous, it's fun, it's just a bit different. It was cheap. For any of the builders in here, it was cheap. Don't know how we made it cheap, but it was cheap. But it's kind of inspirited. This is another really quite poor area of London. This is a project which is 3,500 homes on a postage stamp next door to a new tube station, which we managed to squeeze in on the right-hand side here. And this one is built around a football stadium called Millwall. And they chant, "You don't like us, we don't care." And then they make some Fs and stuff in there too. So it's a tough environment, it's an industrial environment, it's a messy environment, but it has the bare bones of a place. It has a park, it has a waste to energy incinerator plant, which is kind of quite a cool thing to connect into from a sustainability perspective. And what we found is that we inherited lots of arches, embankments, 3 stories of no man's land. And so we said, well, let's give away the first 3 stories. Let's just make the first 3 stories unusual program. We're going to go high. This is a new epicenter of London. There's going to be 30-story towers. Let's make the ground floor amazing, +2. And so we started to actually make friends in the neighborhood and take the warehouses and fill them full of new sporting infrastructure, a kind of a cool sports place, ping pong, a brand new kind of Thunder basketball club. We actually made friends with a huge informal church, and we gave them license to take on the warehouses and actually create huge concerts, cooking up our own ground floor, the real program of the future. Instead of just talking about it and drawing it and saying, wouldn't it be nice? You say, hey, we've got a warehouse, come on in, take it on. And then we'll cook you up for later. And then the later visuals can be so much more compelling, because I know there's someone who'll really take the 3-story sports center, because we've made a sports academy. We didn't think about it, we made it. Therefore, there's someone to take the space. There's someone to take the space inside the industry. There's someone to take the space in the creative spaces. And suddenly the place sings a bit more. It has more life, it has more belief. So our first phase, which is actually 600 homes in 3 30-story buildings collected together around this amazing base, actually has all of that content stacked on top as the base. This stepping, undulating landscape where there's no difference between public realm and program. At Earl's Court, our latest, biggest project, that literally just went live maybe 3 weeks ago. This is 7.5 million square feet of accommodation. It sounds big, it sounds impressive. That's not the point. The challenge is this. How do you go from that to that? You know, it's a big void. It used to be filled with large-scale exhibition buildings. It used to have lots of footfall. And then before that, it had loads of different uses and lots of horticulture at its heart, experimental growing. And so when we ask, how can this place be full again? How can this place invite people in again? Of course, we want to jam it full of energy and vitality. And so to do that, we encouraged our client to make a playground, a ginormous new place to have a festival, go on some incredible rides, and we made a shop into a conversation corner, which allowed everybody, and I mean everybody, to come in and speak and be heard and see the way that the scheme is developing. Lots of hands-on model making, encouraging other people to be involved in the design process. And at the heart of this place is public realm. A sequence of squares, spaces, crescents, a new park, a siding square that retains an old depot and turns it into something new. And so suddenly it's more believable because we can actually open up this place step by step, in implementing the public realm and inviting people in. And it's kind of exciting to look forward to phase 4, which is the train shed, which we don't have access to until 2030. But it's exciting to think that in 2030 we'll have another space to look forward to. And hopefully you'll get a sense of the sort of thing we're thinking about at Bratislava. And then last project for me is Mayfield in Manchester. We don't just work in London, we're working in the other bigger cities in the UK. And here we inherited a history of dereliction around a history of production. This was the old Hoyle factory that used to make incredible dyes and print works and clothing. This is how we inherited it, a completely and utterly derelict state. Somewhere in there is a hidden river. You can't see it, completely buried, completely contaminated, terrible, terrible, sad place. When we did the competition, we were told the rules were this big depot building in the background, that is demolished. We've already agreed the terms with the demolition contractor. Say nothing, it's demolished. And of course I was, I can touch it, it still exists. So give me 3 months to prove to you that it should stay. Thankfully, we proved it, we won the competition, and we took this huge amount of dereliction and transformed it into one of the biggest venues in the whole of the UK. It now contains 10,000 person venue. If anybody here likes digital music, like serious raves, it's the coolest place to go in the UK right now. This place that is definitely due for demolition and don't touch it is going to go. It's now one of the coolest places in the UK right now. But importantly, this place is also right in the middle of the city, and we wanted to reach out and draw in the countryside, draw in the ecology, and make that at the heart of the place. So the first founding event of this place is the park. A new city park, the first city park in 100 years for Manchester. And we had very little money, so we had to do it really cheap, which was really cool because we did it really authentically. We kind of spent half the money kind of opening up the river and cleaning it, and then half the money bringing it to life. And our brand was, amid concrete and clay and general decay, nature must still find a way, which is this amazing line from a Smiths song who hail from Manchester, and it became the manifesto of the whole project. And sketching out the initial ideas of how we could create this terracing environment in front of this exposed, opened up depot led us then to throw some effing parties, and then that made some belief, and then there was some proper program. We made a cute, weird-looking structure, like an alien in the landscape for a marketplace, and managed to take this total dereliction into a complete and utter natural environment in 1 year. From 1 year of gaining consent, we turned this. Literally, all of this happened while we were daydreaming about the project and drawing the plans, and all of this happened in 1 year, having gained the consent to actually deliver the part. And I'm super excited because there's birds and bees and happy people, and this place is already absolutely buzzing. Super cool playground, groovy place to slide, a groovy place to be, and we are now ready. We've created the platform for the architecture, the development, 1.5 million square feet of offices, 2,500 homes to come forward. Everybody believes in the project. It is the reason to turn left at Manchester Central Station. So to finish, if I was to try and sum up on one slide, I kind of like alliteration, hence the 7 S's. If I was to give you like 12 P's of placemaking and the work that we do, it would be these. I'm not even going to try and read them to you all. It's more important I pass over to Patrick. Not too bad. Not too bad.
Okay, this is not going to be easy. This is not. So maybe I suggest before we continue, maybe you close your eyes for 10 seconds, breathe. Take it in. Okay, Snøhetta. We're a different company. It's so interesting to be working with you, David, because we can learn so much from you. And I think what you'll see now is where the differences between the company. I think we have a lot of similarities in the way we approach our projects, in the way we see the importance of a concept, of the way the importance of connecting every individual project to its very specific location, to its very specific context. But in general, and that's what you'll see now also in the projects I'll be showing, is that the scale you're working on is generally bigger. So you're working more on master plan scales, more on the how to engage people in the environments you're creating. And I'm going to show a little bit more on how to engage people in the actual buildings. We all know that, or I hope you know, that in urban design, the most important thing to consider is actually the life in the spaces that you're creating and not the buildings itself. So this comes first. First you have to think about the life, then you need to think about the spatial requirements to allow for this life, and the buildings, they only form the conditions. They only then create the boundaries for this life to happen in between. But still, of course, the actual buildings have a significant importance and are also need to be engaged with. Okay, Snøhetta, what is it? It's not a person. I don't even know if there is a Mr. Snøhetta. At least he doesn't work for us or in our company. Snøhetta is a mountain in the center of Norway. It's here in the fog. It's in the fog a lot. And the reason for choosing this mountain as the name for the company, there's different stories. One has to do with a beer bar in the center of Oslo. But it felt appropriate because there were too many founders to use the names, and we were always an integrated landscape and architecture company. So using a landscape narrative in a region, this is called the Dovre mountain region, where you have trolls and elves and reindeer and musk oxes. You can tell a lot of stories. And you know now from David that storytelling is an important aspect of our business. We're a pretty big company now. We're over 400 people in 7 main locations, 3 in Europe, 2 in the East, and 2 in North America. And we also try to spend time together. So every other year we gather here in Norway, back there in the fog, like I've told you. There is Snøhetta, and we are now attempting to climb this mountain. And why do we do this? It's a big effort to fly people in from Hong Kong all the way to Norway, from New York and San Francisco all the way to Norway. We do this because we want to know each other, we want to help each other climbing this mountain. But we also want to do this because it makes us aware of our physical surrounding, our physical environment. And in this exercise, in this rather extreme landscape, this closeness to nature, it does really sharpen your awareness for your physical environment. And that is what your job as an architect will be, to shape your physical environment. So we spend time there, we try to feel it, we try to suck it in, we try to smell it, because again, this is a conversation we have over and over. It's not only about how a place looks, it's about how a place feels, how a place smells, how you touch the things. So that's what we train when we're out there. Our studio space is not so important. This is our main office in Oslo. It's actually a former warehouse for snowplows right on the fjord in Oslo, where we have 120 people sitting in one room. There's no cell offices. The CEO, the owner, nobody has their own office. We're all distributed in this space. We actually have, similar to Studio Egret West, we have different disciplines contributing to the team, so it's not so important what your education is. The important thing is that you have something to contribute into the project, but we are mostly architects, I have to say that. It all started with a competition victory in 1989. This was the Library of Alexandria. Over 600 competition entries were submitted. And this group of young people, I love the photograph. This is Kjetil Thaasen, this is Craig Dykers. They're still in the company. On the way to Alexandria, they bought a suit in London. And the story goes that because it was an anonymous competition, there was this company called Snøhetta that won. Nobody knew about them. And when they entered the space, the competition jury and the people were like, oh my God, what have we gotten here? They were just about 30, had no experience whatsoever, but we pulled it through. And it's one of the most I think it's still the building that I'm most proud of being in this company because it's a great social place. You know, it's not about the design of the building. It doesn't matter that it looks like a circle in plan. It's what it enables. It enables for social interaction in this building. It's a place where people go to, no matter what their sex is, no matter what their religion is, no matter where they come from. This is a place where they can meet and interact and have contact to the world. Yeah? So choosing narratives also in the design of the building is also an integral part of what we do. So for example, for the library in Alexandria, we already, for the first project, worked together with an artist, Jorunn Sandnes, and she was the designer of this facade idea where we have scripts from over 100 different origins around the planet that were then carved into the granite of the facade. Which the idea was quite obvious, you know, where in Egypt we'll use natural stone and we'll find stonesmiths to make this facade possible. But at the time, in the early 90s, there were no stonesmiths available. There's no craftsmanship available in Egypt that could do that. So we flew in actually some artists and some stonesmiths from Norway and trained young people in the craftsmanship of how to work with granite. We opened a quarry on the Aswan. And by doing that, first of all, we created this facade which will last at least as long as since the last library of Alexandria broke down. So we really hope that this is something that is going to last forever. And the other thing is that with these interventions, we create an aspect of identity with the place. You know, you can create stories. You have your cousin who was working on the facade of the building. You have your mother who went to a library for the first time because she was allowed to. So, for example, in the Egyptian, in the Islamic Spring in 2011, where in Cairo there were big damages also to cultural buildings, in Alexandria people formed up to protect the library because it's their place. So this is really something that we try to do a lot. We try to create places where people can feel at home. And this is now another library 30 years later. It's one of the biggest buildings we're ever going to have built. It's a library in Beijing. And it shares a lot of the same values. It's about to be finished this year. It's a huge public space with a roof on top. Where it's funny with the Chinese clients, they love these narratives. So when we said the sentence, what was it? Sitting under a tree reading a book. That's when we won the competition. It can be very simple messages but you need to pull them through. So this is now on site. It's I think this combination of generosity and intimacy that is really striking for this project. And it's this very funny little diagram that we did for a different project that we come back to a lot is horizontality is not only a social concept, it can be an architectural concept. So whenever it's possible, we try to create horizontal spaces for people to interact. We do this in different settings. So for example, here, this is a commercial building for a company called Swarovski in Austria. They produce, probably you know them, they produce these crystal figurines and jewelry and these kind of things. And we were lucky enough to get the job to do their new innovation center in the town of Wattens, close to Innsbruck in Austria. And it's a horizontal building that contains all of the disciplines that are present at Swarovski. So they have craftspeople working on, I actually missed the sequence. Working on garments, working on jewelry, working on actually crafting the crystals. They get external designers in, and they all meet up in this one space. 4,000 square meters of ground floor area, under one roof, filled with light, creating this interaction. And it's a space that is not only a space where professionals meet, but also where they can invite people, externals, have design talks, get international people here to the town of Wattens. Similarly, a university project we're working on now in Klagenfurt in the south of Austria, very similar idea. Initially, they had thought to build a tower to enable to get the view to the lake. So because here there is a lake, the Wörthersee, close to Klagenfurt. So they thought, let's build a tower, and on the rooftop terrace we'll have a little cafe where we can have the Aperol with the view to the lake. We said, this is not what you need. You need a space for exchange of knowledge. You need a space where people can interact. We don't want compartments. We really want you to create a space where people have the possibility to meet. Also serendipity. It's actually really about this. So we created this huge shed roof where we have over 4,000 square meters of photovoltaics that allow us to totally compensate for the CO2 footprint of the building over its lifetime, because also the rest of the construction is going to be in timber. So this open, generous space where people will be able to meet and interact. If we don't have the possibility to go horizontal, we can also do it vertically. So, for example, a library building here in Toronto, the Ryerson Student Learning Center. It's not a classical library because it doesn't contain any books, but it does have the function of the library for the people to use their information technology and meet and interact. So that's how you approach the building. It's pretty squeezed situation on Yonge Street in Toronto, so everything had to be vertical. So every step into the building, actually you change your elevation. And then this is the most popular space. It's called the beach. It's the 7th floor, but nobody knows it's the 7th floor because it's called the beach, and everybody refers to it as the beach. And it's by far the most popular space on the whole campus. It is actually not programmed at all, but it provides a space for social interaction. Funnily, yet towers, you can build funny towers. It's the project that David has related to. So you can also do a playground in a tower. This was again for Swarovski in their visitor center in the town of Wattens. And the idea was to really emphasize this physical interaction with geometry, you could say. Because Swarovski, what it's about is glass. Yeah, it's really glass. But it's shaped in a very specific way to make it perform. So it's really the three-dimensional treatment of the glass is actually the key ingredient to create this value out of a very bland material. So we try to make this an experience. So we try to really make kids and also adults interact in 3 dimensions in this new space. Stepping back a bit, this is a project you maybe know. This is the Opera House in Oslo. This actually was our second competition, the biggest competition win. Again, it was an open international competition. At this one, it was only 250 entries. And we won it. And I think the main reason why we were successful with this project is that we introduced a total shift in paradigm what a public building could actually provide. Because Norway is a small country. It's now close to 5 million inhabitants, and at the time there was a statistical survey that only 4% of the population of Norway have any sort of interest in opera. So that's not a lot of people. And at the same time, they published the budget for the building, which was 500 million euros. So $500 million for a handful of people. How can you actually, as a country, legitimize this investment? We all know Norway has a shitload of money, but still, it's a misbalance. So our approach to say, we're not going to do an elitistic opera house. We're going to do a public space for everybody to interact on and inside. And it's also going to serve as an opera house. But it's going to change the perception of what an opera house can be. So people go there on Sunday afternoons. They go there also on Tuesday mornings for a run. They go there with their kids. They go there with their grandparents. And they use the space as a new reality, as a new landscape. It's an artificial landscape, but it creates this possibility, for example, to interact with the fjord. And it creates possibilities that we had not even intended. It's not explicitly asked for to ski on the roof, but it's not explicitly forbidden either. And if somebody wants to try it, well, why not? It's not so fun because it's a bit too flat for serious skiing, but it looks great on the picture. On the inside of the building, we do the same thing. You know, there's a foyer. You don't need a ticket to enter the foyer. It's open every day from 7 in the morning to 11 in the evening. You can go there to have your little lunch break, because it's a public space. And because on the outside it's kind of angled, we did the same thing on the inside. And we have kids sliding in the opera house. And there we have, my 2 first children were born in Oslo, and little Emma always said, can we go to the opera house? And this change of perception of what a cultural building can do to you, really, I think, was a bit of a paradigm shift. I'm going to go through this very quickly. It's a building for people. We had underestimated how many people would actually want to use it, because this angled surface creates this fantastic opportunity to have a stage on a pontoon, on a boat in front of the opera house. So in the first summer, there were several events on this pontoon, and there were up until 20,000 people on the roof, which we got a little bit concerned about because nobody had calculated both the egress possibilities and the structural capacity of the building. So after the first summer, it was regulated. You can have events on the roof, but keep it under 12,000 people. So crowded public spaces, totally different context. New York, Times Square reconstruction. It's really, again, it's about allowing people to utilize spaces that actually had a different function. So totally unimaginable, you know, before the reconstruction, that you'd have 2,000 people on a Tuesday morning doing yoga on Times Square. And there's things that are happening on Times Square that also were not intended. We don't care. It's great that these ladies show off their bodies and the other tourists enjoy going there. But there's some conservative politicians who really disagree with this sort of activities that are going on there. So you can see how architecture actually is quite political in some sense. So, and it's these dialogues, these processes that we actually do appreciate a lot. How political can we get, and how much conversation, how much can we trigger through our projects, and also how can our projects, so going back to the opera house typology, change the perception of what the function of a building could be. So this is a project we won, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, opera house in Shanghai, where in the competition brief, it was required for every team to have a walkable roof. How did they get to this idea? We don't know. We still won because we made the walkable roof. It's 3 times the size of the opera house in Oslo. It's a much bigger scale, so we'll be very interested to see how the local communities will then use the project. It's now on site, so you see the huge construction site, a lot of cranes. And it's going to be finished, I think, in about 1.5 years' time. So it's super interesting for us to see how this is almost an experiment, because we have seen that in Scandinavia these places are highly accepted, and it's going to be interesting to see how it works in China. So going from waterfront to waterfront, scale doesn't matter. I think also one message I want to give to you is, even the smallest scale projects can be relevant if you have an interesting idea. So this one is one of the smallest projects we've realized. It's called the underwater restaurant. This is the inside. This is not a CGI. This is actually a photograph. And all we did is, it's a funny situation. This little hotel here, that's the actual site. And you can, with all the photographs, you always think this is the most amazing site in the whole of Norway. It's not that great. It's here in the southern tip of Norway, about 4 hours drive from Oslo, and you have this docks here, some production facilities, but the client owns this site, so he wanted a restaurant. So he said, well, make us a terrace, nice restaurant, funky building, yeah, do something funny. I said, the context is not going to give you, this is never going to be the most amazing view out to the fjord, because you have this context here. It's not so beautiful. But by doing this little trick, making a truly immersive experience, just rotating the building 12 degrees and dipping the main space underwater did the trick and really changed the perspective of the user. So it's really about, it's not what the building looks like. It doesn't matter. It's what the building actually allows you to experience. And this experience is truly impressive. I'm hurrying up. Last project I want to show you, that's actually the smallest in our portfolio, but funnily one of the most published ones. It's this reindeer observing pavilion. It's already 10 years old, so maybe some of you have seen it or not. But the story I want to tell about it is that also challenge your clients, because those people asked us for a reindeer museum in an existing building, and we said, we can do a reindeer, we can do really funky exhibition furniture and stuff, but it's not going to make a big impact for you. Let's look around, let's find something that with the same budget could actually do something that maybe triggers more attention, is more contextual. Because yeah, reindeer is okay, but it's actually the landscape that's beautiful. So we redefined the function. We said shelter and warmth. We tried to find inspiration in local shapes and typologies. We tried to find inspiration in local craftsmanship, both traditional and contemporary. And that's what we try to do often. We take these ingredients, we put them out on a map, and then we rearrange them. So those three things I showed you are present in the design, but we just deconstructed them and put them together a different way. We use 3D printing, we use CNC mills to really then check our geometries, to refine the architectural the architectural result, to always compare it to the ambition, and that's the result. And here you can actually see Snøhetta without the fog. But again, I mean, the image, I think that this image really works well. This is a very popular image. Everybody wants it. There's so many copies of these projects in wellness areas, in hotels. We know about spas in Moscow that use more or less exactly the same shape and geometry. We don't care. It's actually flattering. But what we care about is if it works for the people, and yes, it does. So if you go there, you'll really find that this sitting on this bench, looking out into the nature, really is an experience that is enabled through the architecture that we created. Yeah. Yep. And there's musk oxes, more musk oxes than reindeer, which doesn't matter. Yep, that was about Snøhetta.
So how do you follow that? You follow that by sharing the output of our last 6 months of collaboration. We're at great risk and with great investment in this country, in this client, in your project, in your fair city. We've come up with our initial ideas and now our competition-winning ideas, thank you, for the South Bank. They're not our final ideas, it's not all over yet, we've got a long process ahead of us. We're looking forward to further collaboration together as firms, but also with members of the city, stakeholders of the city, and greater learning and understanding about this place. So I'm going to share with you in 5 minutes to wrap up the initial ideas of our competition-winning scheme for South Bank. It all starts pretty much with our site visit in the summer. You can see when I say 6 months, I meant 6 months. It was like September time, start of September, we all came here together, met Euro, went out on site and discovered that actually this site had a hell of a lot of nature, a lot of trees, and that the trees got there before us. Nature was there first. And it was so powerful for us. We came away coated in pollen, absolutely coated, chased by insects, totally aware of the amount of nature that there was there. We saw a few really powerful, really important trees, clusters of trees in certain locations, and a gigantic tree at the back of the site, which really felt like the champion tree that whatever happens we'd want to keep. And ever since then, we started daydreaming of how can we work with nature? How can we shape the urban form? Because it's an urban form competition, more or less, like an overarching place diagram that we've handed in to date. And so we wanted to find a way of shaping your South Bank, Bratislava's South Bank, with nature, rather than against nature. And therefore we took inspiration from banks, from the river forms, the estuarine forms, the way that nature and waterways cut and carve things. And of course that led us to starting to think about bowls. That's what you see if you look at any beach, the way it contours or is shaped by riparian movements. You find bowls that are cut and carved. Then you find banks that surround those things. And then you find the banks themselves actually forming the potential accommodation. And in these initial kind of photographs and sketches, we started to see the idea that has actually been our idea all the way through. Subtly organic forms that are framing views, that are stepping in their terraced form, amazing views out across the historic town and towards the castle, across the Danube. But importantly, nature is everywhere. The nature pervades all and absolutely flows through these spaces. And at the forefront of these spaces, a series of bowls that could be programmed, that could be activated with a variety of things, whether it be for play or for tranquility, for that Zen moment after I talk too much. Or maybe a kind of informal theatre or culture house with a whole new way of creating an amphitheatre, or maybe a whole array of urban sports that we don't know about yet. Maybe just fill it full of trees, one of the bowls, a forest bowl. And with that in mind, we started to shape the site. So just to pinpoint you, this is the Danube. This is the massive array of trees that sit in front of the site and are not within the site. Then you have the bank, which is the dam, where we all train like Peter Sagan to sort of whoosh along super fast. Don't try and cross that unless you want a bike, unless you're a fast runner, super fast. Maybe we need to slow that down a bit. And then these are the clusters of trees. 1, 2, 3, and then 4. That champion, big fat tree just up on the right-hand side there. And then we thought, how can we tie these together? How can we take on the Apollo Bridge? We don't want the Apollo Bridge to be a barrier. Let a boardwalk run and unite all the way through those spaces, gluing together, creating a little bit of a breather from the superfast cycleway, and actually calm it down and take a moment to kiss, to chat, to hang out with your loved ones, and that would then connect through, and that we should take on the underbelly of the bridge and do something extraordinary there too. And that from that point, we'd radiate out all of our accommodation, the workspaces, the residential spaces, all connected through as nature would intend, and that all of the forms would be subtly sculpted office buildings forming a family of buildings around the Apollo Bridge, acoustically controlled that consideration and protecting the residences, but enjoying the landmark location. And then the residences, again, subtly forming subtle curves, but then staggered to maximize the aspects, and a multitude of terraces, the fifth elevation, the roof, a multitude of public and private amenity spaces, both in the residential spaces and the office buildings. And that we route those buildings through really clever, thoughtful use of materiality, that it felt totally and utterly grounded in this place. And that led to the superhero CGI shot, which will probably be in the magazines from now, online. But you've just seen the workings out slightly. And you hopefully can see this ribbon-like boardwalk uniting these different spaces, different characters, from something more playful, something more about urban sports, something more tranquil, something more like what's going on over there, cultural space, as we cluster and step up to the taller buildings. This is just a working image of how it might be to be down on the lower level of one of the bowls, maybe with a nursery or a creche. This is a working image of a moment of urban delight, of tranquility, of water remediation that actually creates a kind of an environmental system that helps with the natural drainage of the site. This is a moment of the connections through the landscapes, looking all the way through to the historic castle and the North Tower. This is a sense of what it might be like inside one of the bowls, connecting and stepping and engaging with a potential cultural building, community asset. This is how that then might actually stagger up and actually turn into a landmark tower that just keeps stepping and stepping and stepping as it climbs up into the sky. This is how that might then connect through to a neighborhood, a little bit of shopping, a little bit of play, a little bit of meeting each other. This is the forest bowl that takes on the Apollo Bridge and plants it really densely, creating a kind of a campus environment as the buildings step up and into the sky. This is the new tramway connecting into that new campus environment. This is us stepping back and looking back across to the city, just denying the top of the castle, but you get a sense of how that might form. And this is looking the other way, seeing those buildings form around in that array. And this is how it might feel to sort of be in a helicopter, flying above, like we all do, the Apollo Bridge, saying, whoa, so cool. I said 5 minutes, that was 5 minutes. Thank you for listening. Questions? We have time if you have time, but you might have other places to go because we slightly overran. So don't be shy.
Come on, no questions.
We were told to be ready for the fact there would be no questions. So we're going to appeal to you to break that cycle.
We get this question a lot. Everybody said, what was the hardest part? I don't think there was a hardest part. It's always our job, and I think you've understood that now, is our job is to understand the context, map out the conditions, the challenges and the opportunities, and combine them into one solution. So of course you could say the most difficult thing is that there's a huge highway in the south, or you could say that it is a flood-prone area, and how do we deal with a new datum, a new zero level? You could say that Slovakian building regulations are quite challenging because you have all these daylight requirements, you have these minimum distance rules between residential buildings which we are totally unfamiliar with, for example, in Austria. But I think like I said, they create the setting for something new to be composed, and I don't think there's one challenge which was unbearable. I mean, you could say, wow, this is impossible to do urban development with a huge street running through. We say, well, actually, let's make it into an opportunity on both levels. First of all, we create this office campus. I mean, there's a lot of office space here, but there is a lot of potential in Bratislava. Let's create this almost gateway-like situation that shields off, that protects the residential buildings from the highway in the center, and, like I said, create an opportunity out of the disadvantage. So, yeah.
We're not allowed to commit to it. This is not a commitment at all. I'm looking at all of you. This is not a commitment, so you can't say we said this. But there is kind of this idea, and it might turn into something else, that for anybody old enough to know the Red Hot Chili Peppers, that wicked track called Under the Bridge, that we put a Red Hot Chili Pepper under the bridge. And then Euro had that as a little bit of homework and came up with this quite cool idea. But it's still kind of, we need to find out whether we can do anything close to that in any way, shape or form, so we're not going to dwell on it so much. The biggest challenge, I think, is actually the fact that everybody, since we won this competition, is telling us it's going to take 10 to 15 years to build this. And I appeal to you, you are the next generation. Come on, let's make this happen a bit quicker. The biggest challenge is actually how to create a place where, to a certain extent, there is very little place. There's a lot of trees and a lot of lovely walks, and you can have that here. There's a super fast cycleway, which is a super fast cycleway, but it's hard to describe the place then further south as a place. In fact, I don't think anybody goes there. There's such an informal amount of activity there. Our challenge is how to allow people to say, that's my piece of city, in the same way that the Oslo Opera House said, oh, that's my piece of city, I can dwell there, I want to be there, I see myself, my psyche is wanting to be there, and then maybe I want to live here, maybe I want to work here, maybe this is all part of my city, my place, and that's probably our biggest challenge, when people keep saying, because of the regulations and because of the bureaucracy, it will be 10 years before you build anything. We need to overcome that together. Big festival party this summer. Under the bridge or something. See you there, yeah? Great question. Let's have another one.
You said that the most important for you is the life of the people. My question is, when you design for example, Londoners or people in Norway, is it different to design for Slovakians or people in different mentality?
That's an awesome question.
I don't think people in general have different desires or, mentality. Everybody says, but the mentality in Slovakia, people don't. I don't believe you that you don't want to meet up in a nice space. So of course it will require an effort to make a good space, but I think you also will appreciate it. So I don't think there's this general difference in how we use our cities. Yeah. You think so?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I also think that there's going to be a little bit of learning that we're going to have a journey we need to go on, and we're learning that this is not a particularly dense place, it's not a particularly high-rise place, that there's a lot of rural population, and that we have this unusual juxtaposition between Vienna and Bratislava, and yes, it's kind of, it's a historical definition, and so I guess the idea of experimenting in public realm to invite people to enjoy a space, which actually has already started on your South Bank. We had a lovely team drink on the boat opposite. That's a great start. That's already starting to bring people over. And yeah, it's just, I think it's being open-minded enough to just keep maturing and investigating.
How was your collaboration?
It was really fun. There was this terrible moment, and I'll put Mo on the spot, there was a terrible moment where we thought we kind of had a design freeze, because of course we did it all for hardly any money, like a big loss, and someone had to look at it. And we thought we kind of finished. This is Studio Egret West. We thought we kind of finished just before Christmas. And then Mo said, no. That's Mo. From Snøhetta said, no, I think we should change the office building like this. And for me, there was a difficult moment because it was the 23rd of December, and we had to hand in at the end of January, and I thought we were done, and then suddenly it was like, no, we're not done. But actually it got better. So I'd say the collaboration was brilliant because the scheme got better. And I think if you have two amazing practices that get to know each other, there's always a lovely creative tension, and you end up being better. It's like when you do your crits with each other, and you put something up on the wall that you think is absolutely jamming, and then somebody else puts up something that's cooler. Do you go, oh, I'm going to do rubbish then, or do you go, I'll try harder? It's like that. So our collaboration has been like an idea, another idea, an idea we really want, an idea we really want. Okay, that's a really strong idea. Now let's continue to evolve it, and it's been really lovely. Plus, they throw a really good party. And when we got the call, it was the day before I was due to have a ski trip with some of my studio mates in Innsbruck, and we ended up having a very nice party at Snøhetta's place. So they're great hosts. But I would say, in collaboration, always give each other room to investigate. But then once you've agreed to your terms, your idea, fits in, so you can really bring something to life. and find joyful moments to enjoy together. You know, we enjoyed the site together. Patrick then said, let's take the ferry to Vienna, because it would be cool to go down the Danube. And we went up the UFO tower before that, and so we had this amazing journey together. So of course when the Snøhetta team came to Studio Egret West in London to visit us, to do a big workshop, I reciprocated. So we had a beautiful walk and a meal on the South Bank, because it's the South Bank of London. And then we took a ferry all the way along the River Thames, and we ended up going up the Battersea Power Station chimney, which had just opened that weekend, and seeing the incredible new view. So the big learning is to find joy in your chosen profession, in every collaboration, and always go on an amazingly open-minded journey.
Would you like to have another collaboration perhaps?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, we've had one collaboration and we've won, so that's kind of quite cool. So I think there's a decent chance of that. Patrick, what do you think?
Totally. We're
Totally maybe. Definitely maybe.
we are now
joint stock.
Yeah.
We did a photo shoot yesterday, which you might see. And they made us perform like monkeys, and we've been sat on these chairs together,
Back to
actually
back.
back to back. So I don't know how it's going to look. It's quite weird.
But the great thing is that maybe as you have understood from the, because we didn't coordinate our presentations, I didn't know what David's going to be talking about, and he didn't know what I was going to be talking about. But you can see that there's similarities in our approach, and there's differences in our knowledge and in our experience, and I think they meet up pretty well. So that's the whole point. So if there will be an opportunity where this combination of experience and knowledge will be meaningful and fruitful, I'm sure we're going to try again. Yeah. But we're still two different companies. No question.
Sorry?
Yes.
Talking about the collaboration, how did you react on your neighbor? Because your two designs are completely different, so maybe from the beginning, did you think about like going with similar approach, or maybe it was from the beginning like?
You mean the wider master plan?
Yeah, the novelty.
Yeah, the novelty.
I mean here
Yeah.
these yeah.
Great question. We met this morning, Uri Benetton,
Yeah.
beautiful man, beautiful singer.
Yes,
Yeah. Couple moments for that. We had breakfast together. We already started to talk about how these two things mesh. I mean, obviously we were given a very clear site, a very clear set of parameters. Everything that we have drawn and on the CGIs and everything is within, on exactly the parameters that is within the master plan. That's really important, otherwise we get stuck in terms of moving forward the project at pace. I think we saved 2 years or something of bureaucracy by being within the parameters, so that's cool. And yet, you know, we were open-minded to what we felt, and there are things within the plan which we thought could be nuanced more and particularly the nature. So the outline drawings for this were perimeter blocks, and they would have not taken account of the trees. And they would have not created the public realm that we wanted. So now that we create that, we need to work together and synthesize the edges and the way that we make a gradient really from a more typical urban block through to a more loose and open organic block. And that's something which we're looking forward to doing with the team here in Bratislava.
Thank you.
How was your collaboration with the other solar studio that was working with you?
Like me.
How was it?
Because they also make like some art.
Thank you for the question. can answer. Yeah. Okay, so we should. It's so important to. I mean, this balance of having information, local information, but not having too much local information, because no, but it's important if you know everything about the site and the deals that have been going on for the last decades and stuff. Sometimes you're really stuck in locality. So it is good to get the outside perspective. So I think that's why it's so important to get us here to really also. Because I mean, the knowledge we have is state-of-the-art, contemporary urbanist knowledge. Yeah, so we're bringing that, but we have to combine it with, like I said, regulations, with experience about climate, about journeys, about local cultural context, and these kind of things. And Joel was the one to discuss these topics with us. But he didn't come and say, well, you can't do that because this has been tried here and this is impossible in Slovakia and you're not going to get through with this thing. Because that's also what happens often when you go to a foreign city and you have a big office that has a lot of strong opinion, then you get totally narrowed down. So that didn't happen. But it was a fruitful collaboration which we will continue.
Thank you for that.
If you'd like to ask regarding the design, I have to put I'm not really familiar with the tradition or with the general development of the city. But I noticed there's, like, the design doesn't really include the actual map. So I'm pretty sure it was like a decision, but like, why does it, there's like this separation between which is really secluding it from the river and from the downtown?
This is a nature reserve. Yes. We're not allowed to build here. Yeah. Yep.
Very gentle paths, quiet time, nature first. Yeah, I think it's pretty precious to the city. I still hope that the concept of a new Lido coming in some way, shape, or form might happen at some point in time, but it's definitely outside of the boundary that we can shape.
Because I was checking just now the Ventalo page, and there was something regarding the connection to the actual downtown, which is...
Yeah, well, there's a proposed bridge in the wider master plan that sits we hope that happens. But again, it's outside of Pence's control. But it's something that we kind of flow from. So the bridge, comes to here and then and just taps into the whole boardwalk and the sequence of spaces. So we're aware of and have connected into the wider master plan. And as we said already, looking forward to working with Igor and the placemakers, Marco and the placemakers, and that guy again, Euro Benefit, and the right stakeholders to make sure it all connects up.
How did this competition end your attention? Because like I can imagine that you, star architects or like companies can like do whatever you want, wherever you want for more money. As you said, like
it's not like that.
I
don't know why this funny rumor always sticks around that we get all these fantastic invitations, we get hundreds of thousands of euros for participants. It's not the case.
No,
but it was interesting. Actually, we found out about it independently. And it was very well prepared. There was this great website, there was this nice video, so we thought, okay, these are professional people, and the opportunity is a very rare one. Yeah? This site, in this location, in a European capital, that is maybe undervalued, I would say. You know, I mean, you have a city that you can be really proud of, and still many people don't really know about it. And so we thought this is a great potential. Yeah. So that's why we decided to do this.
Plus also Penta shortlisted really well-known practices, Zaha, the architects, OMA, and the Arc Ingles Group, and that sets the bar. And not everybody bothers to do that. So the fact that there was already a commitment and a payment to those practices that participate, and that it was a serious competition, and the brief actually put sustainability in the form as well, and gave enough room, and that there was enough clarity in terms of the briefing, as in staying within these parameters, and it's a real project. Whereas sometimes an ideas competition, you can spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it means nothing, whereas this is a real project, this will happen, and therefore it's definitely worth attention.
I have a more personal question. Why did you study architecture?
Well, I can do that one easily. You've got good the story. Okay, I'm not an architect. I've worked pretty much everywhere around the globe. And I always get introduced as an architect, and I always have to maybe sort that out afterwards or during questions and answers. I'm not an architect, I'm an urban designer. I studied as a town and country planner, which is like the dull-ass thing at university. I loved dancing, I loved raves, I loved like big nights and monster acid batches, and I kind of wanted to party and I wanted to go to a big city, so I went to a place called Manchester 25 plus years ago, and I like to draw, I like economics, I like maths, I like geography, I like people, I like stories, and to me that was like planning. And I thought planning was really boring, and I could make it cool. And I spent my entire career making planning a little bit cooler, and that's turned into urban design, and that's sort of then turned into placemaking, and that's then turned into big architecture and large scale thinking. And it's really nice to have made a cool venue back in Manchester for all the people like me 25, 30 years ago who were looking for somewhere to party.
All the stories? I make it short. My
He's not an architect either!
Actually, I am.
These are good.
My father was a carpenter, and my mother was an interior designer, so it was kind of in the air. But I always taught me, so I'll do other stuff. So I was motorcycling and in film, doing camera assistance and all kinds of stuff. And then I kind of tripped into architecture school in Innsbruck, and I liked it. I liked what was going on. And then the second coincidence was that before graduating, I stumbled into Snøhetta as an intern, and this was what I thought, this is what I'm going to do, because I love those people, I love their attitude. So I don't know if I would be standing here if I wouldn't have bumped into Snøhetta, but it happened, and the possibilities we have as architects are fantastic. And it doesn't really matter now. I'm starting to learn also on which side you're on. It's really the way you think about our physical environment. So caring about designing our physical environments, that's the interesting part. That's where the cabinet maker comes back, you know, the carpet. Yeah. So finish with this one.
That's a good question. Your teammates are going.
I was curious, like, when you started to start working on this project, like, is it important to you to get to know the country that you are going to take a part of, like, in the competition? Like, how much are you going to that country? Like, okay, I don't even know if you really understand, like, where is Slovakia or something. Like, okay, I have this country here. Am I just bringing the Norway my way here, or I'm curious about what's going on there, about the history and everything, like what is Slovak architecture actually? How can it enrich my style, or how can it actually, I can flourish from this, like from the study, not just like to be contextual, but if it's important to, or do you think it is in general important to have this kind of knowledge, to come up with something new, or to have this context?
I mean, like like you can tell we're not experts. We're not experts on Slovakia. That's why we have somebody on the team who can help us out. But we try to learn as much as we can during the process. So before we start the design, we spent 2 days here. We walked, I think, 12 kilometers on site and through the city, and we know about some of the stuff, but we don't know everything, of course. And we try to, it's like I showed you with the reindeer pavilion. I think inspiration finds its way in and doesn't need to be super explicit all the time. So we have a lot of information that we take in, and this 2-day walking around the city, seeing the funny, funky upside-down pyramid and the beautiful National Gallery. These things they go into our brain and they're part of the design process. And even if they're not, apparently, you can find them now, and we don't have the upside-down pyramid because that would be much too literal anyway. So I think it's part of the process, and by taking it seriously, coming here, spending time, talking to people, it's part of what we do. Yeah? But we didn't have somebody telling us about the history of Slovakian architecture. We didn't have a thorough diploma or something like that. It was trying to get to understand what the context is beyond the immediate.
And we're not finished yet. I mean, this is a competition this is a CGI that was made by a company called Wax in Holland for us at a great pace alongside other things. It's not quite exactly how we like it to be yet, and there's still a process to go. It is fair to say that Euro has been an amazing advocate and connection. He used to work at Studio Egret West 15 years ago in London, so he's a friend of a colleague and a collaborator here, so there's always been a connection. And he made it really important that we kind of understood some of the challenges, some of the architectural challenges, some of the ambitions in this city and beyond. It's also fair to say for at least a week we did try to do upturned forms like this, and actually failed dismally doing that, and ended up with something slightly more gentle, I think, in terms of the structure. But we're not.
So at the engagement, they were very engaged. So passion engagement, and then you don't need to have the actual history of the architecture. It's art, it doesn't matter, it's engaged.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe I would like to thank again. It was amazing. We are very grateful that you have spent your time with us, and I hope that we will see you again on this place. Yes?
I just, in 2 weeks' time, there is going to be this Green Building Conference here in Bratislava, and I'll be speaking there. So one thing I didn't show in my slides is how we work with environmental sustainability in our buildings. So if you're more interested in that, I don't know if it's easy to access this conference, but you're more than welcome to. I think you can also join online. So I'll be giving a keynote about showing very different projects that we have realized or are working on that really have environmental sustainability as the key core of their idea. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
invitation.
Thank you. I'm sorry? A green building conference here in Bratislava. Yeah.